Every single person wants to innovate. Create something, build something, and be a part of something. I think that's just how we are as a race from the beginning of time. We were curious about the unknown, what was out there. How do we make life better? How do we engineer, explore ingenuity, see what happens. But at that same moment, right when you're born, there's all these reasons as you learn about business and you learn about what innovation takes. There's all these reasons not to do it, these risks, these fears. And I think one of the biggest issues is the type of icons we get in innovation. You got guys like Steve Jobs, for instance. You start hearing about this when you start talking about innovation. You got this guy that took a huge computer and decided to personalize it, made the first graphics interface, put it on your phone, put it on your wrist, and then developed this open development platform, kind of blew the lid off of everything. And when I think about that, if I was a young kid thinking about, all right, that's what innovation is, I sit there and I look at what he's done and kind of the vision he had, and I think, that's hard. It's just overwhelming. I mean, what it takes to be innovative. I mean, everyone that knows me, at all knows that I kind of have this bromance on Elon Musk. And you get in an electric car, and one of my buddies, Sam, got one a couple weeks ago, and you get in it and you look around and you say, this isn't innovation. It's like magic. Think about building an electric car from nothing. I mean, you've got to go buy some batteries and like some wires and some wire cutters. I don't know. Just think about trying to do that and actually come out with a product like he did. That level of innovation is it's intimidating. And it's just really, really daunting whenever you're thinking about doing that yourself. I think that's why Benjamin Franklin, I always love this quote that he said as a young Turk. He said, most men die at 25, you just don't bury them until you're 75. And I think that rings true with innovation. I mean, we've got this task in front of us that we want to be innovative. You're going to be the next guy that changes the world. And it's just a difficult task. I remember my first business assignment. I kind of thought the same way. I was in second grade. And my teacher walks up and he says, okay, class, pull out a piece of paper and write your top 10 things you're going to do in your life. And so number one was, sure thing for me. It was build a skyscraper. So I pull out my sheet of paper, my crayons, I say build a skyscraper. I'm like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I was like, all right. It's like, that's it. Build a skyscraper. That's all I got. And so I was like, I want to make sure he knows what I'm talking about. So I was like, I'm going to draw Manhattan, down here. And I'm like, here's my skyscraper. And it's like 3 times as big. When you're a kid, that's your idea of what is bigger and better than anything you change the world. You just build a building that's 8 times bigger than the other ones. That's innovative, right? Well, that kind of carried with me all through growing up, high school, college. I actually got a call from my roommate about a week ago in college. We were in computer engineering, and we used to play this video game. And it was kind of funny. I kind of forgot about this. And he was like, do you remember that game we used to play all the time? And he said, I remember I used to play the game, and you could just quit playing the game completely. And what you did was you went to the marketplace, and you learned that you can barter for these goods. You get these unique items. And then you go on eBay and sell them. I was like, no, it's hilarious. I was like, and he was like, yeah, you made so much money offline doing that. And I was like, well, that's just kind of exemplifies what I'm talking about, the kind of guy that wants to innovate, the kind of things they do. Try to game the system, try to figure out how it works and improve it. And that kind of happened all through college, and I was an engineer, like I said. Then I went on to do finance for a couple years. And the interesting thing about finance is that you're, for the most part, dealing with people that are kind of getting out of their companies. They've already done all the innovative things in their life. And so that kind of wasn't my thing. I wanted to get on the front end. And so I went into law school, did a couple other internet startup things. But at the end of law school, I kind of came to this point in my career where I was kind of at this fork in the road. And I said, okay, all my life, I've had this huge, fear of missing out. I wanted to do everything. I wanted to learn a little bit about everything. I dabbled in business. I dabbled in, sales and starting my own companies. And I was like, it makes a lot of sense right now, because in law school, I started working with a friend of mine, and we kind of partnered up on this digital marketing company. And we had clients right now. We had, revenue. We had something we were bringing to the market that we could actually go with. And so I was at this point where I thought, that's probably the smart decision. Have one child, one kid on the way. But then I had this other path. I went to law school, I drank the Kool-Aid, and I've been spending all this time, even though I never wanted to be a lawyer when I first started. And I remember this saying resonating, and everyone's heard this before, the jack of all trades, master of none. And I remember hearing that in college and thinking, it really just resonated at this point in my life, where I thought, I've done a lot of things, but I haven't really mastered that thing yet. And although this is the smart decision, I still wanted to innovate. I wanted to build my skyscraper, so I still wanted to go over here and do something. So I thought, I'm going to cut out everything in my life, and I'm going to focus everything I'm doing on innovating in the legal industry. I'm going to change the game. Go be a lawyer. I'm going to be awesome, be the next Atticus Finch, Don King, whoever you want to say. And so I kind of continue on the path, a couple of years, it was relatively successful. But what you don't realize when you do something like that, when, I was a young kid at the time, thinking I was going to innovate, is that you get in the grind. And so you start working, I'm working maybe 90 hours a week, and you spend 40, 45 hours actually doing what you're selling, doing things for your clients. And then you spend 40, 45 hours a week doing advertising and marketing and customer relations, and you get in kind of this rut where you can't actually do the innovative things you wanted to do. So you're spending 2 or 3 hours a week, maybe, honing your craft and figuring out how am I going to change how this is done, how does this work. And so after about 2.5 years of doing that, I was sitting up at, I had 4 offices then, I was sitting up in one of these tall buildings here in Little Rock, and I was kind of looking over, and I was always identified this point in my career as kind of the lowest point in my career. I'm not usually the kind of guy that focuses on that stuff. Usually I kind of shake it off and I just kind of keep on going. But I remember sitting up there thinking, okay, I've spent 2 years dedicating to innovating in this field, and I really haven't done anything. I mean, compared to any other lawyer in town, I haven't really done anything. And, it was that first moment that kid that you guys are all looking at, since that time where I thought, maybe I wasn't going to innovate. Maybe I wasn't meant for it, or maybe I wasn't cut out for it. And that's because I had this impression of innovating that I had to do something that just changed the world. And I was sitting up there, kind of at this low point, thinking this unwavering belief in myself kind of had wavered. And it was significant for me because that was one of my core kind of fundamental things about who I am. When one of those things you kind of start doubting, it's a significant moment. And so I was sitting up there, and then kind of to pour kind of fuel on the fire, there was this mass exodus. We didn't really know, our firm was kind of breaking up at the time, so we didn't know really whether we could afford this office, needed to downsize. It was very full circle, went into my first law office that I had ever been in, and I was sitting there, and I took 4 offices worth of furniture and put them in boxes into one office, tiny little office that I was now back in. So I'm sitting there, in my office thinking, okay, what am I going to do now? So of course, like any entrepreneur, you kind of have a unfailing positive attitude about things. So I kind of pulled myself up the bootstraps, and I said, okay, now it's time to innovate. I was like, all right, innovate. I was like, I got this, innovate. So I didn't really do that. But 2 minutes into doing, thinking about that, I thought, okay, that doesn't work that way. I'm gonna go back to work. And so I went and picked up my first, client letter that I had in my box, and it ended up being a buddy of mine right before I left. He came up to me and said, hey, I've got this medical device thing, it's this big pharmaceutical company, what do I do about it? And of course I said, oh, well, let me look into it. That's what lawyers say when they don't have a clue what to do. I'm gonna look into that. And so sitting here, got this letter now, I'm like, all right, what do I do? And I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do what every single else person does when they don't know a clue about what they're doing, I'm gonna Google it. So I Google it, start calling, these top firms all across the country, Chicago, LA, all these big John Grisham firms, and start realizing, well, they didn't answer the phone, but they called me back. That's how it works. So they called me back, and I started talking to these guys, and I started realizing this guy sitting in this room, now just downsized with full of boxes, I'm not going to be able to help this client, at least not to the way that the client deserves. Not like the guys that I just talked to could help him. So I'm either going to have to let this guy go, or I'm going to have to change the business model, change how most lawyers, do their work. And it's kind of interesting. So we're at this point. This is right around the point where I partnered up with my current law partner, Andy Vines, and he had a lot of complex litigation experience. So we started brainstorming. What do we do? How do we help this client? And so we sat there and we go, okay, what's interesting is you kind of have these 2 pillars of our economy. You've got the law on one side, you've got tech on the other. They're huge. And what's interesting is that they don't work well together. You got this archetype in the legal industry where you got this lawyer and he's very buttoned up. He's like, oh, you can't do that. There's too much risk involved, and you need to sign 1,000 corporate documents before we get started. And then you've got this tech guy over here that's, very, I've kind of got an idea. We'll be partners. We'll figure it out later. And, run and gun, fail hard, fail fast, that kind of mentality. And it's just not a very symbiotic relationship. Sure, they hire each other, but they don't really work together. And so we thought, what would happen if we kind of took kind of both sides of our backgrounds and just kind of smashed them together? Take out that line of demarcation that's kind of graying up this business model and say, let's make these 2 companies one and see what happens. Let's utilize some of these attorneys that we've been working with and talking to and find a better way to help this person. And so that's what we did. And it stumbled in something that we call, a lot of people in the tech industry known as the shared economy model. It's a buzzword in the tech industry. Anyone in this industry, you know what a shared economy model is. It's very hot topic right now. But just in case you don't, the most common example of it is Uber. Everyone's heard of them. It's, one of the most innovative companies, in the past 10 years probably. I mean, they've changed an industry. They've taken taxis and black cars and completely revitalized how we looked at them. But when you think about it, they didn't do anything new. They're innovative, absolutely. But they didn't do anything new or novel in their process. There were a couple hackers, and they thought, I know a better way to connect these riders to these drivers, and they changed the industry by doing so. They layered on some technology on top of an application and an existing infrastructure, and they revolutionized how you find a cab. And so a lot in that same manner, we decided, let's do the same thing, and instead of every rider being matched with every 16-year-old with the Honda Accord, we're going to match some of these specific clients to some of the best and brightest legal minds of the country. But the interesting part is when we did that, wasn't about even the helping the client part. The interesting part was that we thought that in a way we were kind of getting around being lawyers because we were kind of working with some of these lawyers and we weren't actually honing that craft. But what happened was we started working with these talented lawyers. And the access to this type of level of talent actually ended up making us better lawyers as a result, because we got access to how they did things, what they were doing, why they were doing it. And so it was a very win-win kind of situation. So that's kind of my first point about innovation, is that neither us nor Uber did anything new or novel. We didn't invent anything. All we did was we took some type of process in a world of tech that existed and was very prominent in that world, and we applied it in an industry that definitely wasn't. My last point on innovation is kind of a funny one. We live in this culture of kind of a microwave mentality. Everything needs to be instant. You need instant data. Everything's at your fingertips. And I think there's a way to innovate without doing anything different from what you already do. So ever since I was a kid, I've kind of had this running joke about how awesome I was. I was very competitive, I was into sports, and I'd always tell everybody how awesome I was. So you walk into my tech office, and this is what you see on the wall. I think it's subtle. Obviously, I couldn't get away with this in the law firm. But you see my Twitter handle is Awesome Attorney. But it's funny because my wife's always like, you know what, if you're really awesome, you don't have to say it. People will say you're awesome. And I'm like, marketing and advertising, I've been in this a little while now. Like, that's not how it works. You got to have the threshold, the talent, ability, and then you just scream it louder than everybody else. That's how you become awesome. But notwithstanding that, I kind of want to I've never told in public forum what I really meant by #awesome, be awesome, all the things I type in my browser every day. It's kind of become a mantra for me. So really what I mean is that I want to go every day and go into my office and do something so great that I inspire awe in my competition. That I can inspire awe in, internally and externally when people are seeing about what we're doing and saying, man, that is beyond good or great. I'm in awe of what they're accomplishing. And I think that's really what the core of that meaning and what that means to me and how I think you can innovate within your industry. And so my challenge, kind of to all those that are, out there and 25 and dead and waiting to be buried, is that you kind of redefine what this thought and mindset of innovation is. You've got this goal that's down the road, and you think about how far-fetched that dream is to change the world. But in reality, all it takes is to select a narrowly focused arena and take one step and choose to take that step every single day. You take one more step towards that final location. And along the way, if you're smart and if you're really lucky, then maybe you can find innovation along the way. But it's just that easy, and it's just that difficult. A lot of people talk about how there's no new ideas, there's no new inventions. If that's the case, which I don't totally agree with, I think there are inventions to be had. People will make robots and spaceships. But if that's the case, how does innovation continue to grow culturally or as a country? And I believe that's in the improvement of current processes that are out there, in uniquely applying processes in other industries where they don't exist, because that's everywhere. And finally, in doing what you're doing right now so great that you inspire awe in all those around you. Thank you. What's up?
Hey. So you were born in Busan, if I understand correctly, right?
Seoul, but yeah, I lived in Busan for a little bit.
Okay, so my wife wanted me to make sure that you weren't the guy that threw the rock at her when she was 5 and busted her eye. Sort of clarify that.
Did not.
Okay. All right, so we cleared that up. All right, good. So in your mind, when you think about innovation, you talk a lot about disruption. Obviously, the title of your talk is Innovation Without Invention. And in the startup world, we call that disruption all the time. So what kind of industries, when you look out there, do you think are ripe for disruption right now?
You know, I get on soapbox a lot because the professional industries, it's really funny because it's some of the smartest people with the most education and, you know, a lot of money involved in those industries and those sectors, but they get very tunnel vision on what they're doing, very focused on, you know, doing surgery or whatever it is. And it's very hard for them to spend time on innovating in the business process and the business of that professional practice. So I think dentistry, you know, medicine, law, a lot of these professional industries are very ripe for innovation and for disruption.
Okay. So what are your top 3 rules for being awesome?
First step about being awesome is never talking about being awesome. No way, that's counter to my other rule. Yeah. No, I think it's just about, you know, every single day kind of working towards it. You know, it's very easy to say be awesome and you're awesome, but it's very another story to kind of back it up. So the rule about being awesome, I think, is that you can fail a lot when you're trying to be awesome. I always joke about little things like I'll throw trash, you know, in the trash can and I'll miss all the time, and no one remembers the times you miss. They remember that one time you hit that basket, and that's the trick in being awesome, is forgetting the times you missed too.
It's the Michael Jordan.
That's
I'm
right.
Successful because I failed so many times, I missed so many shots, I lost so many games, etc.
Yeah, just like Michael Jordan.
Just like Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan, everyone. Thanks, Anthony.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it.